I'm Reverend Phil, and I'm your host for Words of the Prophets. Where are our prophets now? Where are those messengers God chooses to communicate divine revelation through? In the past, the Creator sent prophets like Abraham, Siddhartha, Jesus, Muhammad, and many more. Maybe our higher power has switched tactics since we reinterpret God's words as soon as the Creator's prophets leave us. Could it be that Spirit talks to each one of us individually and we haven't learned to listen? On Words of the Prophets, our modern prophets show us how to find the internal prophet that is the I Am, and we discuss the application of spiritual principles in all aspects of our lives.
Love and light, everybody. I'm Reverend Phil, and I'm your host for Words of the Prophets. Welcome back. Today, my guest is Mukhtiar Singh Khalsa. Welcome.
Thank you, Reverend Phil.
Thank
Happy
you for
to be
being
here.
Mukhtiar is a member of the Sikh Dharma community here in northern New Mexico, and today's prophetic topic is Divine Words Can Get Inscribed. This topic comes from the book God, Good, and Goods. This book, which contains 72 stories that are meant to enlighten and inspire, as told by Yogi Bhajan, and we'll get a little bit down the road as to who Yogi Bhajan was. Our saying comes from the story number 55, entitled The King with the Missing Finger, or A Blessing in Disguise. The paragraph that contains our topic reads as follows. Everyone has a pre-written destiny, but it can be erased and rewritten. That is why we do sadhana, which means spiritual exertion, and meditate and turn our minds towards God, so that those pre-written words which are already written can get erased, and in their place, divine words can get inscribed. So before we get into all of this, let's just get to know you.
Okay.
3 quick questions.
Sure.
How did you get on the path that made you a Sikh, and what did you find in it that attracted you so much that you became one, and what does it do for you now?
Okay. I came onto this pretty early. I came into this when I was 17, and I'm 55 now, so it's been definitely the major part of my life. I came into this, it was the late 60s, early 70s. I came out of 2 things that were very influential to me when I was growing up. One was Catholicism, and being raised in Catholicism and understanding kind of a mystery and pageantry to the relationship with God. And there was things that really troubled me with that, is that the mystery was very troubling to me.
How so?
Well,
what did you perceive as the mystery?
Well, it was things that you could not ask. It was
Okay.
things that you had to, in Catholicism, for me, it was things that you needed to have faith and understand. I grew up with that on one part, and on another part was my involvement in Boy Scouts. And Boy Scouts at that time was really headed up by a lot of guys who came out of World War II and Korean War, like my father did, and it was very, they had very clear lines of authority, and it was built not just in Boy Scouts, but it was built in kind of this. So I had this, on one hand, religious thing, one hand, authority thing, and then we lived in this community. There was a lot of scientists, and I had also a very scientific mind, and my mother was a librarian. So I had these kind of things, 3 balancing between them. And on top of that, then came the 60s revolution, and we want to find a new way to do things because it was not satisfied with what we had. So I looked through all the guys. I was living near Chicago. I grew up near Chicago, and between that and the northern peninsula of Michigan. And so we had lots of Babas and saints and Sufis and Rinpoches and all these guys coming through. So I started looking, and I wanted to find something that, what did it direct to me? So I loved the idea of a relationship with God. I loved an idea of something that had lines of authority and clear definitions of things. And I loved something that was scientific, that explained all the mysteries. And then on top of it, I wanted to build something that would go beyond my life, that if I was going to put my life into, I wanted it to be bigger than me and live beyond me and not just be with me. So of all the things I looked at, that was Sikh Dharma.
Do you remember the first time you got exposed to it?
Oh, yeah.
What was that like?
The first time I got exposed to it, you know, I went, I had graduated from high school real early, and I'd gotten into college. I was in Yellow Springs, Ohio, Antioch College. It's a real alternative kind of college. And they were teaching, some guys, friends of mine, my dorm mates were learning Kundalini Yoga. So I started learning the Kundalini Yoga. And what impressed me was that it was separated from the teacher. It was technology that you didn't have to go to the teacher to find it. The teacher's teachers, his students that were sent out, were teaching this Kundalini Yoga.
For the sake of the viewers, can you, because there's, I don't want to say infinite types of yoga, but I mean, pretty much is.
Oh yeah, there absolutely is infinite types of yoga.
What makes Kundalini Yoga different from other yogas?
What Kundalini Yoga is designed to have an experience for a householder. So instead of having an idea where you have to squirrel yourself away in some cave somewhere, everything is designed to be done quickly. So everything is a quick path to perfection with it, and quick path to experience with it. So the sets are 15 minute, half hour sets. So you can do them and still have a householder's life, have kids, have family, and all of those things. And that's how Kundalini Yoga is designed.
How about the name itself? You want to give a translation for Kundalini?
Kundalini? Well, Kunda is curls, and it started with the little curls of the hair. And Lini and Ini is little, so it's the little curls. And it relates to how the energy is wound at the bottom of the space of the spine, and it's in the archetypal to a snake. And in the Kundalini Yoga, you're attempting to uncoil that and allow it to be an energy that you can use.
So what we're talking about is expanding it upwards so it touches and opens up all the rest of the chakras in sequence.
Sure. As you're a little baby, you're a tiny little thing. As you grow, then that Kundalini expands through as your life force.
So how often do you do yoga? Daily?
Daily. I get up in our practice, and it's part of Sikh Dharma. It's part of the way that we in the West relate to Sikh Dharma. To get up before the sunrise. It's described in the Sikh scriptures as the Amrit Vela. The Amrit is that sweet nectar, and the Vela is that veil, that time where that nectar is available. So it's when the sun's rays are at 60 degrees coming up, and you get up, and that's a special, nice time. It's sadhana time. It's a time to relate to that expansive practice. So every day I get up and start my practice about 3:30 in the morning.
So you're supposed to be finished with your practice before the sun comes up?
Yeah, around the time the sun comes up is the time you're finished. So we relate to it as 2.5 hours, because you have a 24-hour day, and 1/10 of that, let's give that back to the Creator, because He gave us the whole day. Mm-hmm. So let's dedicate that 1/10 of it to Him. So that's so you do a 2.5-hour practice.
Is the whole practice Kundalini, or are there other things that you practice along with it?
There's lots of scope in the Kundalini field, and then there's what relates directly to Sikh Dharma, and there's stuff that comes out of Sikh Dharma that's interwoven in Sikh Dharma. Sikh Dharma is a big religion. In the world, there's 25 million Jews, I believe, and there's 27 million Sikhs. So to relate it in where it's positioned in the world, Sikh Dharma is a big part of way human beings relate to God.
Do you do this practice in the morning collectively or individually?
We do. There's a group sadhana, and I'm blessed enough to have a group that I can join every day. And if you have a group, you do it with a group. If not, then you do it individually.
And when you're done, you start your day, or do you go back to sleep?
I have an hour nap, and then I go off to my day.
Well, that's why I asked.
Yeah, some guys go directly from that to their day.
Because I usually get up at 5:30 to meditate.
Yeah.
I don't do yoga, but I do some stretches and some other stuff.
Yeah.
And then I go back to bed for now.
Yeah. And I just find it's a really, it's my habit. It's my practice. It's a great way to relate to the day. I find.
So raising this energy up, what does that do for an individual?
Okay, what it does for an individual is gets them in a sense of where they are in their life. We like to think that we live in just a real world where we're just people and we have jobs and all of those things. But we also live in a world that's much, much more than that. It's how to have that interplay between the two. And that's what it does. That's what Kundalini Yoga does.
Keeps you centered in the spirit, so to speak, while you're out in the material?
Yeah.
And how does that tie in with meditation? Do you find that enhances your meditation?
Well, it's designed specifically to enhance meditation. And a lot of Kundalini Yoga is meditation. It's directly related and interplayed with meditation. And meditation is a way to let you put you in a position that's structured so that you can see what it is you wouldn't necessarily get slowed down enough to see.
Which would be?
Well, we have a lot of basic conflicts in life. We have a lot of things that are things where our whole purpose in life is to have an experience that we can try to understand. And as we relate through life, we start out as little kids trying to relate to life and finding ways to get secure in how we're relating to life with the tools that we have. So it's a play between your subconscious, which your unconscious, which knows everything, your conscious, which is kind of befuddled and going along and trying to figure it out, and the subconscious that's talking between the two. So meditation is a way to actively bridge that subconscious and into the conscious.
Are you looking for answers, guidance, or just connection?
Connection. I mean, I was blessed to have a teacher in my life, and the way I started relating to my teacher was to be just chock full of questions. What's this? What's this? How's this? Tell me about this. Bring me to this. Bring me to this. As I figured out the relationship, I thought for a second, and I said, wait a second. I brought myself to it, and I said, hold on. I'm relating to a teacher. My teacher, I'm expecting to know more than me. How is it that I know enough to ask the question and drive him to the way to teach me? I stopped asking questions.
Yes.
I stopped asking questions and I just started watching. And I found it was a much better way to relate to my teacher.
How long after you had your exposure to Sikh Dharma did you just say, okay, I'm converting?
It took me, immediately I looked at it and I said, yeah, that absolutely makes sense to me. And then I spent about 1.5 years, 2 years, really confirming it for myself and looking at all the other avenues to make sure I didn't miss something.
Did you then, I'm not sure how I want to ask the question, but you and I started talking about the role and the purpose of a guru. At that point, do you get one, or now that you've committed, or how does that all work?
The relationship with a Sikh, as soon as a Sikh has a relationship with a Sikh, he's relating to the Guru. We started talking about it when we were talking at the Santa Fe Baking Company a little bit. And we started talking about how there's a God, the idea of God, or creator, or maker, or however we want to describe it, because through Sikh Dharma we look at it, there's just one. So whatever name you give it, it's still the same. And it can have multiple names. And if it's infinite and it's beyond infinite and it's totally tied to infinite and it's only one, you can't miss it. So the idea was that when we were talking about, is that we as individuals, and we look at the world and we look at how it's made and we have that experience, then even though we're connected with God and we're indivisible from God, we're looking at ourselves as individuals and we're relating to the rest of creation. And we're looking like we're center of the universe and we're relating to the rest of the creation. The idea with Sikh Dharma is that there's a guru. And guru is directly translated, gu is darkness.
And
ru is light. And so it's the balance between...
Oh.
Well, ru...
I heard ru was remover, so the guru translated into darkness remover.
Can be, well, it's darkness and light, and it's the play between that darkness and light.
Okay.
So it's the balance between that makes it complete. Ru you can relate to like color, a rouge, like that. And gu you can relate to in the nod as gu, like a sticky mess. So it's kind of that between that sticky mess and that relieving light, and it's that balance between the two. Because the guru has to be complete in it. So what makes it complete for you as a person is to have something to relate to that you can look at as being that doorway, that complete expression of God.
So is there any qualification to have that designation, or
As a Sikh?
Yeah.
The qualification is, I want to be a Sikh.
No, I'm talking about as a guru.
Oh, as a guru?
Yeah, I mean, can anybody who's further along the path than you guide you on that path?
Well, in Sikh Dharma, we relate to a specific guru. We relate to the guru as it expresses itself as the Shabad guru. The Shabad is the sound, is how it's been expressed in sound and language. And so we have a specific path of gurus and a specific lineage of gurus. Because the problem with gurus, if you're going to look to that which is going to balance your lightness and darkness, you don't want to go somewhere that's going to lead you to something you're just going to have to fall back from. So the best thing is to find a guru that's effective and a guru that's right and accomplished. Anything can be a guru for you. Anything can be that doorway, because as soon as you're looking to complete that pact to make it all expansive, anything can be that. But how discriminating do you want to be, and how sophisticated do you want to be in your life? And you look for a more sophisticated, the best guru that you can find.
Ultimately, where did that quest bring you here to Santa Fe? New Mexico?
Yeah, it brought me here to New Mexico because I saw the Sikh Dharma and I saw that that's what I wanted to relate to, and that's what I wanted to build on and say, this is how I want to build my life, so that if I'm going to... I watched my father work for Western Electric, and big, huge company, and coming out of World War II, and everybody's going to work together to build this thing, this society that'll house and feed everybody, and then that fell apart. So I was real conscious of the idea of, let's try to build something that's going to be bigger than us, that can go for generations. So when I got involved with Sikh Dharma, I realized its home and its center was going to be in New Mexico. So if it's going to be there, that's where I want to be.
And at that point, let's go back to the opening. We talked about Yogi Bhajan, and he was here by that time.
Yeah. I came here in 75, and first we had it started here in 69, I think. And by 71 or 72, it had moved from Santa Fe out to Espanola. And I came in about 74, 75.
Did that mean you studied directly with Yogi?
Yes, a lot. I had a lot of interaction with him. And I was blessed enough that he didn't throw me out of my ear, but let me have a good close personal relationship with him a lot.
That must have been really nice. That must have been really special.
It was. I'm totally shocked that I had that opportunity. I'm very touched by it.
I imagine that the community has grown quite a bit since you arrived here.
Yeah, I mean it's grown through things, and it's grown bigger, and it's grown more sophisticated. It's grown smaller in some ways, and it's a really incredible metamorphosis. And I look at it and I say, you know, it's every day. It's something that I continually recommit myself to. It's, you know, we tie a turban. You know, people may not know a turban's not formed like a hat. You have to put it on and tie it every day, and it can come off, and it's just a big 6 yard piece of cloth. So you tie it, and it's my identifier. But every day you have to decide to tie it.
What is the significance
of a turban?
Yeah.
Well, there's a couple things. First, it comes out of the Orient, and you have to understand the Oriental kind of point of view, is that royalty would wear turbans and holy men would wear turbans. And I heard it expressed this way, you know, it comes out of the term Yamaka, which was the term Yama is the Lord of Death. You know that in Sanskrit.
Okay.
In Sanskrit, there's a Yama, who is the Lord of Death, and Ka is that which negates the Lord of Death. It protects you from the Lord of Death. So traditionally, people would tie these, their beloved would weave a piece of cloth, their mother or their sweetheart, to send them off to battle. And they would wear this cloth to protect them and keep them protected and keep them safe. So it's all these things intermixed. And then on top of that there's a very strong identity in Sikh Dharma, is that we're demanded. It's our order from our Guru to be identifiable and to stand out and to show ourselves, so that we can't retreat from our righteous duties as householders and as holy people, so that we can't escape. So we wear turbans, and we wear our bana, and we wear our distinctive cloth. So it gives us a new identity, and it gives us that position where people recognize and have that expectation from us, and we can fill that expectation.
We're going to get to that in a second.
Okay.
I'd like to talk about that. But I want to talk about, because so many religions, in one form or another, cover their head.
Yeah.
Is there any tie-in? I mean, what you were talking about, the yarmulke. Yarmulke is a Jewish word for that little thing they wear on their head.
Sure.
Are we talking about some form of protection of the crown chakra?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a protection, it's a filtering, it's kind of a way to buffer it. So you have, it kind of contains its sensitivity, so that you have a way to deal with it in a more filtered way.
Is it keeping something in, or is it keeping something out, or both?
Both.
So what we have we keep, and what we don't want stays out.
Yeah, we have a little more control over it. And not only control, but we also show reverence and respect. We go and we say, I'm showing gratitude to my Creator. I'm showing that I understand that the only way I can be existing is with my breath. And if my breath left, I would have nothing. I couldn't make money. I couldn't keep my money. I couldn't have children. What would they matter? And you can't control your breath. It only comes from God. So everything is a gift from God. And to cover your head and to say that reverence in all of your life is to say, I acknowledge this as a gift. I'm grateful for this as a gift. So maybe it tricks you into thinking and remembering to treat it like a gift.
How much of that focus on the breath is tied into both the meditation and the Kundalini yoga?
Oh, it's tremendously tied in. It's tremendously tied in. Everything starts with breath, and everything ends with breath. And we're said to have a specific number of breaths. That's our life, and it's not tied to our time. It's tied to our breath. And so you can control your time or your width or your experience on earth by controlling or managing your breath.
Is there a particular visualization that you do with the breathing from meditation that you could share with the audience?
Sure. There's one so you can work to make your breath a 1-minute breath. You breathe in and then hold your breath and then breathe out. but try to increase it so that cycle takes 1 minute. We normally have like 15 breaths a minute, but try to slow that down. Try to just sit with yourself and inhale and then hold it and then exhale. And do that in a measured way and try to sit and time that. And spend 15 minutes a day trying to control that to a 1 minute breath. And when you do that, focus your eyes like through your closed eyes to the tip of your nose. And then visualize a little blue pearl. And just focus on that.
If my memory serves me, I had a Tibetan Buddhist nun 6 months ago on the show.
Sure.
And she did a demonstration of meditation. And she also talked about focusing on the tip of your nose.
Yeah.
That's interesting. The commonality.
It's a real fascinating commonality. Once you get back, I mean, these are all things that were developed by people over a really long period of time. I was shocked. I was in the 70s and I was thinking about, how do people live their lives? Why do people live their lives the way they live them? And there's an anthropological study, and in this study they talked about hunter-gatherers in arid climates and how much time they spent in survival. And the figure they came up was 2 hours a day average. So they spent 2 hours a day average earning their keep, making their shelter, finding their food, surviving. The rest of the time was social. If you look at that, and you look at people who are basically smart, they're not stupid, and they like to explore things. They look at the sky, they look at their breath, they look at their social structure. And if people have done this for thousands and tens and thousands of years, and they pass this on from tens and thousands of years, there's going to be commonality. There's going to be sciences and technologies that develop. And how do we tie those in? And that's why, with your nun, there's a commonality to these things that becomes a science and a technology that really, really does work with the human body and our experience and how we are.
Let's use that as a segue into the history of Sikh Dharma.
Okay.
Where did it start? How did it start?
Okay. It started with a central guy, and his name was Nanak. And Nanak is no means no. No, say no when you have to say no, is the definition of Nanak. He lived in a time in India where there was Islamic influence, there was Hindu influence, there was Buddhist influence, there was Christian influence. He had all of these things tied together at this one time in the period of history. And he looked at it all and says, there's going to be, let's look at this path that unites it or takes away the things that don't work. He looked at the caste system, and he started everything from one reference point. That one reference point is Ek Onkar. Ek is the number one. It defines one. Ong is like it relates to Om, that people are very familiar with. But Om and Ong is that sound that ties it to the creation. Om is like infinite, but it's untied infinity. It's like floating through the cosmos. Ong is how it ties to creation. Then Kar is that root of karma, that root of work. And what that is the creation. So Ek Ong Kar, it simply goes to, there's one creator that's tied, that is made the entire creation. And because it's that principle that's also landed in it, it's inseparable from that creation. So everything from Sikh Dharma starts from that. And that was the principle that Nanak set out. So there's no somebody who's holier than somebody else. There's no place where a woman is less holy than a man. There's no place where a child is less associated with God than in anybody else. So Nanak set out with those principles. And he says nobody has to go through this through a priesthood. Nobody has to go through this experience through anything else. And that's how Nanak started this idea. And then he built Sikh Dharma through a series of, he passed on the guruship to another Sikh, who was a Sikh of Guru Nanak, and that was Angad.
Let me back you up for a second.
Sure.
Was there any revelations that, I mean, how did this all develop within, how did this person,
How did Nanak develop this?
I guess my question is, was it a scientific process, an intellectual process, spiritual process, all of the above?
It was all of the above. The story of Nanak is this fascinating story of this, boy who was born into a Brahmin family and then, couldn't find his way and his, parents started trying to get him involved in commerce and trying to get involved in spirituality. And it didn't work for either. He would go to his teachers and he would know more than his teachers and they would get frustrated with him. He would go into commerce and he got this job in the counting house where he would count out the grains to the people. He would count out the portions of grains and he'd get to the number 13. And the number 13 is the same word as thou or thine. So he would go tuhi, 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 and he would just start passing out the grain and without counting anymore because he would just be repeating thine, thine, thine. It's all thine. So how can I count it? And then there was just he developed in his relationship, and then he started traveling, and he was a man that traveled throughout the known world. He found himself in Mecca. He found himself in China. He found himself in Persia. He's found himself on these huge, huge travels. And every place he traveled, he kept finding this common union with everybody. And when they found it, they loved it, and they loved what he found. So he became for everybody this title of Guru was attached to Nanak. And he was understood and accepted as being the highest guru that could be available.
Did he deliver, so to speak, a finished product, or is there a book, so to speak?
Well,
Scripture.
He had sets of scriptures that he would write. He would burst into these spontaneous songs, and and the songs would be written down. And so there's all of his songs that exist today, written in his words, from his language, the same tone, the same tongue that he spoke them in. They're not translated by anybody. They all exist as he wrote them. And then as the guruship developed, he passed the guruship on to Angad. And then Angad passed it on to Amar Das, and Amar Das passed it on to Ram Das, and it went through a series of 10 individuals. And all of these 10 individuals would have these experience and experiential lives, and they would write all of that down. And then they compiled it into one volume, the ones that intersected. And then they went off into the other buckets and the other peers and people who weren't Sikhs and there weren't gurus, and they tied them into this volume. And this volume became known as the Adi Granth. The Granth is volume or scriptures, and Adi is one or infinite or primal. And then the last guru, who was in a person, Guru Gobind Singh, looked at it, this lineage, and he says, we want a guru now that's can be unaffected by humans. We don't want somebody can come and pay him off or influence him. So he passed this guruship that was passed from guru to guru to guru directly into the Adi Granth. And the Adi Granth then became the guru for the Sikhs. And so the living essence of that guru, instead of being passed into a human body, was passed into this volume of scriptures.
And that basically seals the scripture, so to speak.
Absolutely seals them. They cannot be touched. They are word by letter by letter by letter. The 1,432 pages are untouchable. And they're in the original script, and they're written in Gurmukhi, which is the language of Mukh is mouth, and it's liberation, but it's the Gurmukhi, from the mouth of the gurus. So it's exactly as they sounded when they said it. So the idea is that you read it, you're putting yourself in the place of the guru saying it. So you're not only hearing it, but it's coming through your mouth, and you have that your tongue can touch the 84 meridian points in your upper palate and excite your pituitary in a way that it was excited for the gurus. So you can have that exact same experience. And that's some of the beauty of the technology, like I was talking about earlier, where we say, I didn't want to have a mystery. Well, everything is laid out here, and anything you want to know is right there for you to go to.
So I guess the question then becomes, for me anyway, my curiosity, is this book, is Sikh Dharma congregational? You talk about practicing collectively yoga and I would assume meditation. Is there a congregational element? You read the book like once a year, you read through it,
In our congregation, we're really blessed. We have a big enough group, and we have what's known as an akand pot. And akand is infinite and tied to the infinite, and pot is activity. And it's where we take the Siddha Guru Granth Sahib and we start on Wednesday morning and we continually read for 24 hours a day through the entire 1,400 pages, 1,432 pages, until we finish on Saturday. So once a week, as a community, we read through the entire Siddha Guru Granth Sahib.
So everybody in the community signs up for a shift, so to speak?
We sign up for an hour shift, and
I'll take 6 to 7 in the morning on Thursday.
You betcha.
That's really neat. And you just do this week after week?
We've been doing it week after week, and I've done it. I've done it basically at least once a week. A lot of times, 3 to 4 hours a week for the last 34 years.
Do you have such a thing like study groups, like what we're reading and talking about? Or?
Oh yeah. And everything in it is set to music. So there's music that's involved in it, and we as Sikhs, our whole relationship, our identity, that is our commonality, is our guru. So we all, if we have a squabble between ourselves, it's how do we look at that conflict? Well, it relates to the guru. We have that commonality, that median point that we all go back to.
So it gets sealed in the book.
Yeah.
How does then, like the title Yogi, come into being?
Well, yogi is not necessarily related to Sikh Dharma. Yogi is, we all live our lives, and I'm an electrician as well as a Sikh. And you have different things that happen in your life besides just being a Sikh. A Sikh is how I relate in this way, and I'm very strongly identified. But that's not all I do. I also live a householder life, so I'm a husband, and I'm this, and I'm that. And yogi is something that is. It goes from an older tradition. Sikh Dharma is tied to an old tradition, and yogi precedes that tradition. So yogi was developed in its completeness before Guru Nanak appeared, and Sikh Dharma in its fullness appeared. So yogi is how it relates to that primal unified relationship between man and the infinite. And there's a whole technology that goes along with that.
So there's a separate qualification for that title?
Separate qualification for yogi.
Okay. And how many yogis are there in Sikh Dharma?
Well, as all of the gurus were considered tied in yoga somehow and tied as yogis in some way. Guru Nanak was considered a yogi. His sons were considered yogis. He didn't pass the guruship on to his sons. One of his sons became a yogi who was the most reverentialized yogi in India, Baba Siddhi Chand. And he continued to live for 150 years as a youthful man. There's all sorts of technology that relates to yoga. And thrones of yoga were bestowed within Sikh Dharma. But yoga, there's lots of yogis who will never be Sikhs and never want to be Sikhs and don't relate as Sikhs. Although they may have some understanding of Guru Nanak, they may never have an idea that they have any association with Sikh Dharma.
So, Yogi Bhajan was effectively the head of Sikh Dharma in North America.
Yeah, he got.
Yeah. Is there another yogi taking his place now, or how does that line of succession go along, I guess?
Yeah, there's not any direct line of yoga that, he went and said, okay, you're the new master. He didn't bestow that. We do all have a relationship. We didn't tie ourselves to Yogi Bhajan or the Sri Singh Sahib directly. It was like our teacher, like our assistant. He would call himself a mailman. He would say, I'm delivering you to the Guru's doorstep, and now it's your job to relate to the Guru. So we had that in commonality, where we both had our relationship as Sikhs to the Guru. And that relationship, there was no hierarchy in that. So we had somebody who's more experienced and obviously qualified and obviously who he was. But that doesn't make him my channel to the infinite. He becomes like my most beloved mentor, my most beloved companion.
Okay. That's nicely put. You used the name in the secession, Ram Dass, and that triggered something for me, because I was reading God, Good, and Goods, and Yogi Bhajan thanked Ram Dass for the inspiration. I'm like, because Ram Dass is just the guy who lives across the street, so to speak.
Right. Well,
so he wasn't thanking him. He was thanking one of the...
He was relating to Guru Ram Das.
Yes.
And Ram, is the Lord Rama. And Das is like servant or slave. And so Ram Das is the slave of Ram.
Mm-hmm.
And so Guru Ram Das is the fourth Sikh Guru. And the Sri Singh Sahib had a very close relation. You'll hear the two titles for Yogi Bhajan. His name was Harbhajan Singh. And like my name is Mukhtiar Singh. That's my Sikh name. And Singh is, if you know Singapore, that's that same name. Singh is lion.
Mm-hmm.
Singapore is the home of lions. But Singh is a title that Sikhs take as their middle name. And they have a first identity. And that's never tied to gender. So there can be Mukhtiar Kaur, Mukhtiar Singh. And you say Mukhtiar, there's no way to say between Tom and Sally. You say Sally, it's a lady. It's Tom, it's a Tom. In the Sikh's first name, there's no relating to gender. So the relationship with gender comes in the second name. And you hear Singh, it relates to lion. And one of the tenets of Sikh Dharma, one of the ways we express our discipline, is we leave ourselves as the Creator made us. We don't cut our hair. We leave our hair grow as it is. So a man is like a lion because he has this long mane and he's very filled out. And a lady's name is Kaur, which relates to princess. And so it's the idea that every woman is a princess and every woman has that royal line.
So let's go first and third name. Mukhtiar, what does that mean?
Mukhtiar, it was a name given to me as my spiritual teacher gave it to me. In Mukhtiar, the easiest, quickest translation of that is divine authority. And there's Mukh, which is again like Gurmukhi, mouth or liberation, and Tiar is a suffix that denotes authority. And it was an old Persian title in ancient Persia, where there was a person who was a Mukhtiar, and that was a title that was given to somebody like Count or Duke or Sheriff or something like that. And he was a guy who operated beyond the normal lines of authority. There would be a city council, and a Mukhtiar would walk in, and everyone would respect him, and he didn't have to operate directly. So then there's Singh, and that's lion, and Khalsa is a family name. Now there's all family lineages in Sikh Dharma. As we developed this in the West, and the big thing that the Sri Singh Sahib brought with him was that Sikh Dharma did not have to be locked within a culture. It was something that was universal. So his idea was he started teaching yoga here. First he was in India knowing yoga, being a respected yogi, watching people fly over, the Beatles and everybody fly over to learn yoga, and the yoga teachers give them this bit if they gave them big piles of money. And so he says,
Yeah.
wait a second, this is just corrupt. Why don't I go to where those people are coming from, and I'll teach them the real yoga. So he came here to do that. So he started teaching people yoga. Say, why are you wearing a turban? Can I relate as a Sikh? And he says, well, I guess so. I don't know why not. And so we started as students relating to his Sikhs. And he says, well, that's not what I meant to do. I wanted to have yoga and yogis and you know, and people find their grace that way. But if they want to do it as Sikhs, okay, we can do that. So as we started off as Sikhs, we didn't have a cultural tie through generations to other Sikhs who were born before us. So we wanted to start a new family name, and our new family name was Khalsa. And Khalsa is pure ones, and it's a name that relates through Sikh Dharma as a family of pure ones.
My understanding correct that Khalsa is then specific to non-native born Sikhs?
Any Sikh can take the term Khalsa. And some, you know, a lot of Sikhs culturally interchange their family name, and they'll relate to one family name or another family name. Because people, you know, we're starting to get an interest in genealogy in this country, and we have the TV shows now where the celebrities, you know, trace their genealogy. Well, in India, you have these huge, rich families, and your mother's name might be one thing, but you want to tie to one lineage or another. Suppose you have a family lineage that goes back to Krishna, and it's an uninterrupted historical lineage right back to Krishna, but it's from your mother's side. You can choose to relate to that side of your mother. So you can have, in family, you can have different last family names within brothers and sisters from the same mother.
So you can choose your last name but not your first name?
Yeah.
First name is given to you.
Your first name is given to you.
Going back to the beginning, was that given to you when you first signed up, so to speak, or was it like, we'll wait a while before we give you a name so we get to know you?
Well, people can have it as quickly as they want, you know, and in my particular circumstance, it was my first time that I really had a chance to ask Yogi Bhajan for a name, asked him for a name, and he prevailed through his own good graces and technology and status and capability and gave me my name.
So he named you, not the people who introduced you in Chicago?
No, it was directly from him.
Okay.
I wrote on a piece of paper my birth date that gave him his information he needed for numerology and his whatever he knew and looked at, and then gave me my name.
Let's go back a little bit to what you were talking about with regard to the origins of Sikh Dharma. So this was in an area where there was an influx of a lot of different religions.
Sure.
Do you think that Sikh Dharma reflects any one of those more than others?
I think it's a really, really good balance. I mean, the way I look at it, it's a very good balance between Abrahamic tradition and Sanskrit traditions, which are the two basic major forces that were, you know, meeting there in northern India.
I mean, I see the Sanskrit all over the place.
Yeah.
I don't see the Abrahamic. Where do you see that?
Well, that's how it relates through Islam, and how it relates to one God. I mean, immediately, if that comes to mind, if that doesn't bring anything, it relates to it as being one God, one central identifiable God with a name, and that name can be invoked. You can invoke the name of God through Islamic tradition, through Abrahamic tradition, which is Jewish and Islam and Christianity. You go to Yahweh, and in Jewish tradition, you can't even express the word Yahweh. You get stoned if you even begin to consider Yahweh. And Allah, the most primal thing in Islam is to say Allah, Shah Allah, it's the will of God. Everything relates to Allah. And it's the same thing through Christianity, where Jesus and Yesu and Hallelujah and all of those things. So that's a real basic part of Sikh Dharma that relates to the Abrahamic tradition.
Is there a name for God in the Sikh Dharma tradition?
Yeah, there's lots of names for God. One of the primal names is Waheguru. Wah is a term of exclamation of just utter awe and bewilderment. Wow. And Guru is as we talked about before. So Waheguru is that most expressive form of Waheguru. Another name for God is Satnam, and Sat is truth, and Nam is the name of God, that identity of God, and then there's just Nam, so that you relate to the Nam, you relate to how God expresses himself through the sound. And if you go back again in Abrahamic tradition, you go back to the Bible where it says in the beginning the Word, and the Word was God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gospel of John.
Yeah.
Does the God in Sikh Dharma have a gender?
Well, God is God. God is just infinite. God is, sometimes in Sikh Dharma scriptures, we relate to the beseecher as the bride and God as the groom. And it's just a way to make it into a persona so that you can kind of make it human for yourself, because it's so big and it's so indescribable and it's so vast that it's that, how many names can you make for it? Those are plenty, and you can make more.
Well, that's why I asked the question about the Abrahamic traditions, because what you're describing really is the first line of the Tao Te Ching.
Yeah.
The Tao that can be described is not the Tao.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and so I had a hard time picturing the Abrahamic traditions as, from what I know of Sikh Dharma, which is growing rapidly with this hour.
Does that make sense when I relate it back to the one God and naming God? Does that make a sense?
Somewhat, but I still see that to me, I mean, basic Hindu, Vedant, the Himalayan predecessor, so to speak.
Sure.
They were all, I mean, there was one God,
Yeah.
And then they created all those sub-gods to give people a focus to understand something better. But
aspects and facets.
Aspects is a good word for it.
Yeah.
I need to cut in for a minute. I just got a couple of announcements.
Sure.
Then we'll come back and have a parting thought or two.
Okay.
Okay. First off, want to let you know that next week, my guest, we're going to have a panel discussion, and it's going to probably go on for 2 shows, because we've got 5 people from our community who are going to be talking about the present and future of congregational ministry. And we're going to talk about where it is, what's happening to it, what is affecting it, and possibly where do we see it going. So you want to tune in for that. It's going to be an interesting show. Also, just to let you know, I'm looking to do shows on Edgar Casey. If anybody out there would like to come on TV and talk to me, for an hour about Edgar Casey, I would love to do it. Got a big history with Edgar Casey, but I don't want to do a one-person show. It's much more fun to talk to somebody. So if you think you have some information and expertise, understanding, contact me. It's been flashing on the screen, and it will be at the end of the show as well. Also, I'm looking to do a show where we talk about, kind of beginning what Mukhtiar and I was talking about, what is the path that you folks have taken, and how have you, drifted off, so to speak, walked away from where you've been to where you are now. Want to do a little panel discussion on that, because I think too many people are kind of feeling like they're locked into their, the religion of their family, and if they're not, they're just locked into nothing. So, again, if you're interested, contact me. Last but not least, I am besides a minister, I'm a state licensed alcohol drug abuse counselor. I do spiritual counseling. My services are on a donation basis. I believe without a spiritual component, we do not heal. Or to put it another way, I can't solve my problems with the same instrument that created them. So if you think I could be of any help to you, feel free to contact me. We'd love to hear from you, love to talk to you. So we got about 3 minutes, 4 minutes left, probably closer to 3 than to 4. Parting thought?
It was lovely talking with you. It was really a blessing to have the opportunity to talk with you, and I hope we found out more about each other this week.
I think we did. I mean, you and I had talked, and I want to share this on the air because my first guest, and I called him my first real guest, when I first started radio 10 years ago, quoted me Yogi Bhajan. And he quoted me, what he said was Yogi's basic teaching was, if you don't see God in all, you don't see God at all. And that was the most profound thing I had ever heard. It was so simple, yet so to the point.
Yeah.
And so I've had numerous experiences and numerous guests over the years from Sikh Dharma, and always enjoyed it. But yeah, today, for some reason, we just got more into detail than I've done in the past, and it's been fascinating.
I got a question for you. You said that you found a different way to say it for yourself, that if you can't see God in all, you can't see God at all. How do you say it?
I end my meditation with it every day, and it's basically, thank you, God, for your presence in my life, and thank you, God, for showing me how to see your presence in everyone and everything that's presented to me today.
That's wonderful.
It works miracles for me. I mean, I really believe that the way to change is through belief and intention. So I have to, with prayer, affirmation, however I want, whatever name I want to call it, I have to set that intention. I've been doing that now for 10 or 11 years. And I mean, and I get to that place where I get to see what I'm saying. You keep saying it, and after a while it's like, yeah, okay, this person's God.
Yeah.
And just what you were talking about. And it works beautifully.
Very lovely.
I loved it. I mean, it was just so profound. Anyway, we got to put a wrap on. We're running out of time. Mukhtiar, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Reverend Phil.
Maybe we can get you back. We'll do a little more talking and maybe actually do some yoga meditation demonstrations.
I'm happy to do it.
Oh, no, I would love to do that. We'd like to make use of the visualizations.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Tune in next week for another show. Know that in whatever way, shape, or form you want to look at it, whatever name you want to call it, you are God. Walk in love and light, demonstrate it, show people what that means. Blessings to you all. I'm Reverend Phil, and I've been your host for Words of the Prophets. Thank you for tuning in. Please join me again next week, same time, same channel, for more Words of the Prophets.